Good evening, everyone. Late Night Mega here, and tonight we're playing a lot of wacky stuff. This is Saltai Artifact Gifts Ungiven. Yeah, this is what we're playing now in Modern. So I got Gifts Ungiven, and I wanted to try them out. This was originally a 4-color gifts deck with the whole, Unburial Rites and Iona and uh, Elish Norn, but I just found that to be the 4-color mana base was very painful, and there's a lot of burn and aggro decks going around at my local game store right now. So I decided to cut a color and go with this idea. Also, that deck was running Birds of Paradise to try and power out a Gifts Ungiven early. If gifts ended up getting countered or not resolving, or something went wrong, or I didn't get gifts by turn 3 or 4, the deck just felt really kind of poor. So I decided to cut a color and kind of go with this. We have tons of weird synergies with this deck and weird cards that you typically don't see. So the main idea with gifts is there's a few different things we can do with it. Mainly we have Life from the Loam here. So we use gifts, we get a package of Life from the Loam, Raven's Crime, Ghost Quarter, that's in our mana base, and Urborg. And what this does is no matter what 2 cards your opponent sends to the graveyard, you can get access to all 4 of them. You can dredge with Life from the Loam, maybe put some more lands in your graveyard, get back 3 lands. This creates a loop where you can play Ghost Quarter every turn, and Tron decks just love it when you do that. Told you this deck would have some weird thing to do against Tron. And you can also play the Urborg, turn everything into a swamp, which lets you cast Raven's Crime here. You can cast that from your graveyard by discarding a land. Hey, guess what? Life from the Loam gets us back 3 lands. And we can just keep doing this until our opponent's hand is empty. This is awesome against control decks, and most combo decks, too, don't really enjoy it when this happens. So there's that. Other things we can do, we can get Academy Runes here, and we can get Eternal Witness, and then we have some artifacts like Engineered Explosives, Worm Coil Engine. We got Noxious Gear Hall, because standard card, there's a lot of standard cards in this deck. More so than you would expect, at least. Batter Skull, that's an artifact here, and just get some nasty artifact recursion going on. Or sometimes you just Gifts Ungiven and you get a removal package of Maelstrom Pulse, Saltage Arm, Abrupt Decay, Snapcaster Mage, Eternal Witness, whatever you need that's going to get something off the field. There's one of Echoing Truth. You guys know how much I love this card. If you don't, check back on the Esper Supreme Control deck tech. So I'm not going to cover Echoing Truth too much here, but I love having it as a random one-of. There's a lot of random one-ofs in this. So I decided to take things a step further. I did have, instead of these 2 Filigree Familiars and 2 Glissa the Traders, we're going to come back to that, is I had 3 Kitchen Finks and 1 Cryptic Command, and kind of had a bit blue heavier of a mana base due to the Cryptic, and the whole Cryptic Command Eternal Witness loop you can create. But I decided everything this deck was doing was super slow and super grindy. Say you needed an artifact, you cast Gifts Ungiven, you go get the artifact, or you get the artifact you want. You can get Eternal Witness to Academy Ruins and Life from the Loam. Well, if your opponent bins your artifact and your Academy runes, well, then you have to play either Life from the Loam or uh, Eternal Witness to get that back, and so there's at least 2 or 3 mana there. Then you have to have the mana to cast the artifact, or play the Academy runes and then pay 2, tap it, put the artifact back on top, and then wait another turn to draw it. And so this deck did a lot of it did a lot of stuff, but it did things very slow and grindy. So a lot of times, like if you needed an immediate answer to whatever your opponent's doing on their side of the board, it was sometimes difficult to get. I think that's one of the weaknesses of this deck, but there is a lot of wacky stuff. And the Glissas actually do help speed up the artifact retrieval process here. So I'm like, well, I'm already in the black and green color, so why not go with this? So I cut the Kitchen Finks, and I put in 2 Filigree Familiars in place of the Kitchen Finks. And I'll talk about that in a moment. But the idea here with Glissa is, if it dies, I'm not super concerned about it. You don't need Glissa to win, but Glissa does help you generate a lot of insane card advantage when you start blowing up your opponent's creatures. So we've got 2 Engineered Explosives in the main deck, something else we can also recur with Academy Ruins. But yeah, say we have Glissa out and Engineered Explosives, we blow up their creatures with Engineered Explosives. Glissa then triggers. Since their creatures died, we get an artifact back from our graveyard. We get back Engineered Explosives. Same kind of loop with Executioner's Capsule. You can just keep looping that over and over. It's really silly. It turns into 3 mana, destroy a creature, and get your card back. So yeah, they can't really afford to let this Glissa hang around too long. And also, First Strike and Death Touch is a really nice combination. Yeah, it dies to Bolt, yeah, it dies to the new Fatal Push, which this deck was, since it's obviously lacking in Fatal Push, was built before that card was spoiled. Once the card was spoiled, I kind of set this deck aside. I only played it for a few weeks, so it's not as fine-tuned as I would probably like it to be. So that's why I'm calling this a part 1, because obviously when I get a playset of Fatal Pushes, at least 3 or 4 are going to find their way in here, and we're going to bring this deck back, and we'll do a part 2 follow-up of where this deck ends up going. But yeah, First Strike Death Touch will kill a creature in combat, and unless that creature has First Strike, they're not going to be even touching Glissa. That's interesting phrasing. Well, Death Touch, because the Death Touch damage will kill the creature before they get to damage Glissa, and that and Glissa killing a creature in combat will also trigger her effect. And that brings me to Noxious Gearhulk. This was originally a Grave Titan, but this deck has a hard time reviving, non-artifact creatures and such. And if my opponent has something on the board that I want destroyed, Grave Titan may or may not get the job done. He may just drop a couple zombies into play and eat a Path to Exile. But with Noxious Gearhulk here, Gearhulk will come out, destroy the thing, gain me some life, and also if I have Glissa on the field with when I play the Noxious Gearhulk, well, Gearhulk just instantly triggers Glissa and I can get something else back from my graveyard. And that'll bring me to Filigree Familiar, which I have mixed feelings about at this point. Spending 3 mana for a 2/2 that gains you 2 life feels really bad, especially when you could be playing Kitchen Finks, which has 3 power, and it'll come back and gain you another 2 life. When Filigree Familiar dies, you get to draw a card, and so it feels bad on its own. But if I can return it just 1 time with Glissa, even returning a 3 mana 2/2 here, Filigree Familiar, it feels pretty good when you're returning that with a Glissa effect. To return anything with a Glissa effect, and it feels pretty good for you. And so I'm probably going to keep those at least for now. Definitely needs some more testing here. I'm not sure if 2 Eternal Witness is even the right amount. Like I said, this is a very... it looks like we have a lot of low cost of stuff, but this everything that this deck tries to do, it does in a slow and grindy manner. But it does have a lot of things it can do against creature-based decks and aggro-based decks, goblin players, anything that doesn't like engineered explosives is not going to want to see them main deck, and they're certainly not going to want to see you recurring them with Glissa or your Academy Ruins down here, because that just gets silly and out of control really quickly. Late in the game, you can also use Gifts Ungiven to get a life gain package of Thragtusk, Noxious Gearhulk, Wormcoil Engine, Batterskull, or if you've drawn one or more of those, throw an Eternal Witness in there, or just whatever else, really. And just get some value out of your Gifts Ungiven. And, whatever two life gain things your opponent gives you is not going to look good for any of those aggro decks. So, yeah. And now, of course, obviously when your opponent sees you doing all this silly stuff with the graveyards and the artifacts, they can bring in their graveyard and artifact and graveyard and artifact hate from their sideboard, and that's still kind of okay, because even if they're sitting there holding all their graveyard hate, you can still just drop Eternal Witness and Thragtusk on them and Glissa and just beat down with them, turn it into a mid-range deck. I did also have at the first iteration, I had Ashiok, 2 Ashiok and 2 Kiora, the Crashing Wave in the sideboard as well, to kind of give the deck another access to attack on. Those cards might be coming back into the main deck, or not necessarily in the main deck, but back to the sideboard for those purposes. I just felt that I kept milling them with when I dredged back Life from the Loam here. But anyways, so yeah, tons of synergy. I'm not entirely sure I like the Inquisitions and Thought Season here, especially when you have the Raven's Crime. That's one of the other downfalls with the deck, is it didn't feel consistent enough in what it was doing. Like, yeah, you can always end up drawing something that removes creatures, something that can counter stuff, but it felt like it was lacking consistency. And sometimes you get to the late game, you'll have tons of stuff to do when you have, trust me, you need mana and you need time in this deck. And with Academy Ruins, all the graveyard shenanigans, all the bringing back stuff shenanigans, there's always stuff to do, but it just takes it takes a lot of time to do it. And that's kind of one of the issues I have with the deck. But also top decking a late game Inquisition or Thoughtseize when you already have the Raven's Crime thing going feels very unnecessary. So these might become, I don't know, they might become Serum Visions, or they might become Ancestral Visions, some sort of card draw. Who knows, maybe Cryptic Command will find its way back in the deck as a one-of. Eternal Witness also feels really slow. I'm not entirely sure if I want 2 of those, because it can feel pretty bad. Again, another 3-mana, 2-power creature is not always the greatest. Yeah, this is kind of the deck. This is what I've been doing lately. It's a lot of fun once it gets going and it works. Remand also feels pretty bad for the deck. Like if I'm going to counter something, like I want it countered and gone. I don't really want my opponent to cast it again. Yeah, I've got discard. I can maybe make them discard it, but it just doesn't feel good. So there's still some tweaking that needs to be done with this deck. Oh, Sultai Charm. I suppose I should talk about this thing. Sultai Charm, Maelstrom Pulse, they're kind of catch-all answers. Sultai Charm can kill a monocolored creature, destroy an artifact or enchantment, or it can also help me filter away some stuff I don't really need. So there's that too. But again, with Fatal Pushes, I gotta figure out where those are going in here too. Probably in place of some of this stuff. Yeah, we'll see how this deck turns out as things progress, but I'm looking forward to it. I do like the basic concepts of this deck, and I like the way that it uses the green. It definitely does a lot of unique things that all my other control decks on this channel haven't done, and I do enjoy it for that. And these finishers are nice. That's always nice to drop a Worm Coil Engine and not be playing Tron. So let's go to the mana base where we have other things happening down here. We have a couple one-ofs with these manlands, one Hissing Quagmire and one, where is it, Lumbering Falls. Both of them have been very nice, and you can also return them with Life from the Loam as well. Once again, if you're using Hissing Quagmire, though, to answer creatures on the field with Life from the Loam, you know, it's a really slow process, because you have to spend 3 mana to animate it, you block, you know, the creatures will trade, then you play Life from the Loam on your turn, so you're spending 2 of your mana doing that. Then your Hissing Quagmire comes in tapped again, and then you have to wait another turn to use it again. Lumbering Falls, that's won me a game or two in the few weeks that I did get to play this deck before Fatal Push was spoiled. And the hexproof is really nice with this thing, let me tell you that. And so, and if it ever does find its way to the graveyard once again, you can rebuy it. But for the rest of this deck, mainly you want to be... The idea was to play something that costs 1 black on turn 1. That's why, you know, you've got the Inquisitions, the Executioner's Capsule. You know, drop that on turn 1. Your opponent will be entirely confused. It's very amusing. So yeah, like I said, this deck runs a lot of weird cards, but it does a lot of things that work well. So yeah, that's why I went with because the idea is you run black on turn 1, and then turn 2 you can drop a Botanical Sanctum that gives you access to your green for Abrupt Decay and your blue for these 2 mana counter spells. And so that was kind of like the ideal sort of land play. And since the mana base could be improved, I don't own Zendikar fetches, that's why we've got the one of Windswept Heath in here, because there are some things. There's your creatures up here take double green. One nice thing though is the Filigree Familiar just takes 3 colorless, as opposed to the where I have the Kitchen Finks that also takes double green. So yeah, sometimes even before you get like Urborg, sometimes double black is hard to find, which can kind of screw you up as far as Executioner's Capsules or casting like I don't know, a Glissa and activating a capsule or something. So do be mindful of those things. So yeah, I probably need to work on this a little bit more. And then there's Drowned Catacomb also. Yeah, I think this deck would also prefer, instead of 2 Watery Grave and 1 Overgrown Tomb, to flip those numbers around and get 2 Overgrown Tombs. But I only own 1 of those, so once again, I was just kind of working with what I had for the moment. But this is a deck that I want to pursue and upgrade. I don't even know if Sultai Control is going to end up looking like this when everything is all said and done. But this is definitely one of the more unique decks, and it's very fun to play when things are working out well. Sometimes you just get stuck with a bunch of, you know, creatures and things that don't really interact with whatever your opponent's doing, and then you know, they drop a Scape Shift on you, and you've only got a few counters in the deck. So I don't know, I'll tinker around with this. Sideboard real quick. Hangerback Walker, that's in there. Duress, lots of Duress. I don't know if Duress is supposed to be in here or not. I think the Ashioks were still supposed to be in here somewhere. Maybe over 2 of the Duress. So yeah, Ashiok and possibly Kiora, maybe another Planeswalker might find their way into the sideboard. I don't know what I'm going to do with Sultai Control. It's really interesting now with Fatal Push, and yeah, a whole bunch of stuff just kind of opens up for the Sultai color combination. I'm excited to try this out and see where this deck ends up going. A second Executioner's Capsule for decks that aren't running black creatures and have a lot of big creatures, so you really like the synergy with the Glissa and the capsule. Pithing Needle, Nihil Spellbomb, all stuff you kind of expect from me by this point. Tribute to Hunger. One of Nature's Claim. It can also be another part of your Gifts Ungiven package. Something else, maybe, I don't know, Icecrown Scepter can find its way into this as like one of or something. I've got the tutor package for it. So yeah, this is Sultai Gifts Ungiven Artifact. You control wackiness. It does a lot of weird stuff. When it works, it works really well, but it works very slowly. But yeah, using an infinite loop of Ghost Quarter every turn, and then making your opponent discard a bunch of cards with Raven's Crime at the same time is kind of devastating against some decks. Against other decks, searching up tons of removal for their creatures or your finisher package here that all gains you a ton of life. That's also very useful. So we'll see where this one goes. We'll post a part 2 sometime eventually when I get around to it. I'm looking forward to this deck and what's going to happen with it. So let me know what you guys think about this one in the comment section. Give this deck a try for yourself, because it runs a lot of bizarre cards, and it makes it very fun to play. So this has been Late Night Mega. Good night, everyone.